The House That Eats Time, Part 3, The Lost Ones. Daniel stood before the house, his heart hammering in his chest. The door seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if it were alive. He could still turn back, walk away, try to build a new life in this unfamiliar future. But he couldn't. The missing people were still inside. Lena Carter, others from different decades, trapped in time. Steeling himself, he gripped the doorknob and twisted. The door swung open soundlessly. Inside, the house looked the same, dusty floors, peeling wallpaper, the distant sound of a clock ticking. But something was different this time. The house wasn't empty. Figures stood in the shadows, just beyond the candlelight. Their faces were distorted, shifting like melted wax. Their clothes were from different eras, Victorian dresses, 1950s suits, even futuristic jumpsuits he didn't recognize. The lost ones. Daniel took a step forward. Lena, he called. His voice echoed strangely, like the house was swallowing it. A woman stepped forward. She looked young, barely in her 20s, wearing a 1920s flapper dress. Her eyes were hollow, black pits where pupils should be. "You came back," she whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. "You're Lena Carter." She nodded. "We've been waiting for someone who can leave the house." Daniel's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" A man in a 1970s disco suit stepped forward. "You got out once. That means you can do it again. But this time, you have to take us with you." Daniel's head spun. "How?" Lena pointed at the grandfather clock. It stood where it always had, its hands spinning wildly backward. "The clock controls time here. Break it, and we might be free." Daniel hesitated. If he destroyed the clock, would he be trapped forever? The walls shuddered. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the house. The house knew what they were trying to do. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. The whispering turned to screams. The figures around him twisted in pain, their bodies warping. Then, the floor split open. A massive, skeletal hand burst through the wood, its fingers long and jagged. A creature, no, the house itself, was trying to stop them. "Daniel!" Lena screamed. "The clock, now!" Daniel didn't hesitate. He ran. The clock pulsed with an unnatural light, gears grinding against time itself. The skeletal hand lunged for him, but Daniel grabbed the fireplace poker and swung. Crack! The glass shattered. The clock screamed, a terrible, inhuman sound. Time fractured. The lost ones began to fade. Daniel felt himself being ripped away, his vision blurring. Then, silence. Dash dash dash. Daniel gasped, falling onto cold pavement. He was outside. The house was gone. No ruins. No sign it had ever been there. Just an empty lot surrounded by modern buildings. But he wasn't alone. A group of confused people stood beside him, Lena, the man in the disco suit, others from different times. They were free. A wave of dizziness hit Daniel, and he collapsed to his knees. Lena knelt beside him, her face no longer hollow. "You did it," she whispered. Daniel looked at the sky. The sun was rising. The house was gone. But deep in the cracks of reality, something else was watching. Waiting. And it wasn't finished with him yet.